everybody, and welcome to Book Banter. I'm Raina from Blue Cypress Books, and I am talking this evening with Bethany Mangle, who is the author of Prepped that came out last year, and her upcoming book, All the Right Reasons, that comes out on the 15th of February. So we're going to talk a little bit about both of these books, but a lot about this one because I just finished it and I need to talk to somebody about it, and who better than the author? So while you guys are here, if you have any questions or comments, please type them down into the comments and we will answer them during the event. And without further ado, I'm going to welcome Bethany onto the screen. Hi.
Hi.
All right. How are you this evening?
Oh, not bad. I'm glad to be back.
Awesome. I'm glad to have you back to be able to talk about this new book. And it doesn't come out till the 15th. So these are always kind of tricky conversations because I can't give out like anything that would be spoilery at all. But also, I have so many questions. So it's like a little bit of both. Your new book, right? All the Right Reasons, which I really like both of these covers. Did you have any say in any of these in this cover? Like how did that work for you?
It was mostly just like a lot of incoherent screaming. Like they gave me the original design and the color palette. And then kind of just, sending in a couple of details here and there. But like this is all just like the brilliance of the designer and the artists involved.
That's like, I hear that a bit where they kind of give you get to have a little bit of input, and then it's like, as long as you don't absolutely hate it, you're good.
Basically, that's the simple version.
Yeah. So I really these are very different covers. Do you know if it was the same artist that worked on them? I don't know. Oh, I bet it says.
It is two different artists, but the designer's the same.
That's kind of neat. So it gives it cohesion even with different art.
Yeah, and I love them both, even though they're so different. But I feel like with this second one, with All the Right Reasons, once you finish the book, you appreciate the level of detail even more.
Yes. Okay, that is definitely true. So here's a bit. If you look closely at the cover, there's kind of some hints. They're not spoilery hints, but they're like give you sort of an insight into where this is going, which I like very much. So when we talked before for Prepped when it first came out, had you already finished All the Right Reasons at that point? Like how long? Where are we in that timeline? Put me where are we?
Well, I am a chaos pantser in terms of writing. Like I don't outline. I don't know really what's going to happen. So I already had All the Right Reasons like kind of as a draft, and then I had another project that I was also working on, but I wasn't really sure about it. Basically, I kept hitting a wall on that one, and then I would say, okay, well, I'm going to go back to like my dating show book. And after a while, I just kind of forgot about the other project entirely and had this one, kind of wrapping up more. So it was complete, but I still had to add like a lot of things into it. And then when I was working, with my editor on this, we added even more in revisions. So.
And we were talking earlier about like, did you watch a lot of reality TV to prepare for this?
Yeah, it's funny because obviously I get that question a lot, but I don't even like reality TV that much. My mom is a big fan, so it's one of those situations where I've kind of always watched it from a distance. Like she'll have it on and we're doing something or I'm visiting, etc. And then funny enough, my dad, he is just obsessed with Survivor. He has loved it from the beginning. And so that is one reality show that I have watched. But it's not the same as watching something, like a dating show, but it has some of the same elements. And then luckily my editor really loves reality TV. So she was able to give me some insights into little things I should add to make it a little bit more authentic. So I felt like, she rescued me in some parts where I was like I reached the end of the internet and I was still not sure.
Well, what's interesting is like, you didn't watch them. You're like, I need to prepare. And so I'll watch a bunch of reality TV. I don't know if I'd be able to sit through all of that either. So
Yeah, well, one of the things I wanted to avoid is I had seen a couple episodes of different reality shows and dating shows here and there, but I didn't want to watch them like to prepare for the book because I was afraid that I would accidentally like absorb some key feature of it that I didn't understand the significance of necessarily, and then have it appear and people would either be upset with it or they would say like, oh, well, this is like a ripoff or something to that effect. So while I wanted to stay true to some of like the deliberate tropes and conventions of reality TV and dating shows, I was afraid that if I watched like I marathoned, like 9 seasons of 12 different shows, that I would accidentally like take something that was so unique that it would stick out kind of in a different story.
that makes sense. Yeah, I wouldn't have thought about that either. And you're right. Like people who are really into the show would recognize something. If they read your book, they'd be like, wait a minute. I know this is only that character in that show and that season.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, for sure. So Linda asked if you'd ever consider being on a reality show.
Oh, wow. I guess it depends on what kind of reality show. If it was something like kind of like a Big Brother, where you can spend a lot of time just like dramatically lounging on the couch and talking to the camera, then I would consider that. But if it was something like, hey, go live on this deserted island and, only eat rice and sit out in the rain under a palm tree for like 15 days, no, thank you. I am an indoor human, so something like that would not work. And then a dating show, definitely not. That just seems so like confusing, like to navigate and not knowing like what's real and if people are authentic, that I would be awful at that.
That would be like, I think one of the hard things with some of those dating shows, like The Bachelor and The Bachelorette, is a lot of them get married at the end of that. And I'm like, dude, I've known you for 6 weeks. I didn't know. Could I commit to another date without cameras? Absolutely. But like forever? That's so rare that happens where you like know this person is going to be in your life for that long. That's one I can't see.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you.
I want to be on the Survivor type show, but I know I will lose. So it's like, I believe I'm rough and tough and I got this. But I know that against people who actually like work out and camp more than I do, I'm nothing. So that's a struggle.
You know how there's always like in the beginning of a show like Survivor, there's always like the one person where you're like, oh, like just because they like, take off for the epic race and just face plant after like 3 steps or something, or like it's a balance game and they just keep falling over, dropping things and breaking everything. That is me, like in my kitchen trying to make a sandwich, never mind like being, sleep deprived and hungry and tired. And then like, let's go, do this challenge or something. I would be awful. They would get rid of me like the first week.
Exactly. Like I feel like I might be able to pull some sort of strings or work some sort of angle where they would have some sort of pity on me, for a couple of weeks, like, but when it first started, when it really came down to it and things are getting real, they'd be like, we don't want her on our team. Please don't make me pick her. Okay. I watched actually, there's only a couple reality shows that I've watched the whole seasons of. And I watched the first like 6 seasons of Naked and Afraid because I was like, you can't look away. It's like a weird car wreck. And I don't know what they were thinking. The Discovery Channel, I think it's the Discovery Channel or Travel. I mean, that group of that company, they were like, we couldn't think of anything else. So we just put some naked people outside. And I was like, yeah, okay. All right. I'm in. I'll watch. What are you doing?
When I was coming up with like the concept for the dating show, I remember thinking like, is this too unrealistic? Like, is this not, is this something that would never happen? And then I started to look into like the actual like real life shows that exist, I'm like, oh, never mind. This is definitely like not even in the top 10 weirdest things that could happen on a reality show.
Yeah. So, we can give people a little bit of the setup. So we're talking about the reality show, but I realized that we know what we're talking about and we haven't done any of the setup. Would you like to take that away? Give us the setup.
I'm so bad at explaining this show, but basically it's like a create your new family contest. So it is a bunch of single parents and their children are going on the show. So the children are they're all different ages and they're trying to interview each other and pick their sibling. And then you have the parents who are obviously like looking to fall in love with the star. So it obviously gets a little bit complicated because then, my main character, Cara, finds herself accidentally kind of getting a crush on another contestant's son. And that makes things a little bit more complicated as they go into, the final rounds where, she's kind of at odds with her mom about who they want to keep on the show.
Mm-hmm. And in the book, we get a lot of behind the scenes of Cara and her mom, because that's who we're following from the beginning, a little before the show starts. And you only get these tiny glimpses of the other contestants and their kids, which is just enough. I mean, I could probably read this story, at least three of the contestants. I could read a book about how they got there and what they're doing, because you learn just enough to keep it going. But I'm like, so what's the story? Like, one of them is clearly a child actress, right? I need more. Like, when did that start? She's only, I don't remember her age, but she's a teenager, right? So she's clearly been in a commercial. What's up with that? Is the dad also some sort of actor situation? Because of his personality, I could see that. Like, or he could not be. Like, I could read that one. And there's a couple other ones that I could read the backstory of too.
I mean, that's kind of what I love, though, about how the show is set up, because Cara also has all those questions. She's like, I don't even know all their names. What am I supposed to do? And she has the same kind of crisis because she has all these questions, but like her ability to interface with the contestants is so limited and so controlled that it's not like she can just ask some of these questions outright, because the producers are always there, like meddling and pushing her in certain directions. And so that's why, she gets very frustrated by that too, of wanting to know more. And then also being a little suspicious because she knows how they presented her, which isn't 100% authentic to the way that she really is. So she's like, how do I trust what they've told me about everyone else if they couldn't even get, me right?
Exactly. I'm wondering whether it's a purposeful thing the producers are doing or just a misinterpretation of what she likes to do.
Right, exactly.
You don't know, and she doesn't know, and you're right. No one gets an opportunity to really sit and talk to them, which is, I've never been on a reality show, but when you're in a room with a bunch of high-powered people who are in charge, a lot of times it's hard to be like, I need a real sit down with you, like a actual meeting where I feel like you're understanding me, and they never get that in the show really either. So I was wondering this too about the setup of the book. The heart of it is this reality show, but really before that, Cara and her mom, and then her dad is there, and they co-own this gym, which I just thought was a very interesting thing. The mom and dad co-owned this gym together, and then as they divorced, they still co-own this gym, which is, it seems like a blessing and a curse for them. And the setup there, where did that come from? That feels like a very open-ended question. Like, what gave you that idea to have their background really is kind of messy too? She's not just a single mom looking for somebody in that same way,
I wanted it to be different than just like the mom looking for love. And I feel like in a lot of books, especially like in the YA space, you have parents and they're kind of like in the peripheral, like fringe zone of the story. Like they appear sometimes, they have a scene here and there. But you don't really see the main character's relationship with their parents being a central focus, especially if there is a love interest. So I wanted to kind of dial back on the romance and kind of delve deeper into the family dynamics, because I feel like that informs so much of, you know, how you treat romance in your life and going out as a young person for the first time after high school. And I wanted to show how, you know, Cara wanted to go on the show for, you know, many different reasons, but it wasn't just her decision. And a lot of it was, I want to help my mom. So that's something that I feel is like, I don't know, I guess something that I just really hadn't looked at before, of like the responsibility that you feel towards your parents sometimes, even though like they're supposed to take care of you. Well, that's not always the case. Like, you know, your parents have bad days, they have bad things that happen to them. Sometimes you have to help them too. And so I really wanted to make family more important. And I couldn't think of a better way to do that than to put them, kind of trap them in this situation that they couldn't get out of. And then just make dad just like a generally horrible person, like in every way, and just have her kind of struggle with, what do you do with that? Because it's her dad. So she's not just gonna, you know, okay, I don't I don't want to see you anymore. But she also doesn't really feel like, you know, like she can have that relationship, because she's, you know, she's conflicted about the way that their family broke apart.
Well, and that's one thing that I do think you grasp really well, like it comes across really well in this book, is in the beginning you do get that back and forth. You know, Cara is going to go, she works certain days at the gym, you know, helps out. And she talks about wanting to go and parts of it that she really likes, and then not, you know, and then being like wanting to hang out with her dad and see her dad. But then she sees her mom, and then how bad her mom feels about that situation. And then it's not picking sides, because that's never presented to her. They never force her to do that. But you can see that back and forth inside Cara, just like what you're talking about. And another piece where you see that later is as the mom is picking, she's narrowing down the contestants, and her reasoning, which she shares with Cara a lot of times, the reasoning why she's picking who she's picking. And as an adult looking at her making that choice, I can see like this, I don't agree with this choice, but I get why you're making it. The reasoning that she gives to Cara sometimes, I'm like, okay. Like, I want to say I would never pick that. I would never do that. But at the same time, if I put myself in her shoes, I'm like, well, you have a point. I don't know if it's the right one, but I get it. And like, there are some YA books that I could, without like any reservation, recommend to a teenager and to an adult. And All the Right Reasons is definitely one of those, for those exact reasons. Like, there's adult stuff that I don't think a teenager reading this they would probably pick. Oh, she's doing that. That's the wrong choice. That's the right choice. And I'm like, I see the nuance of why the mom is doing what she's doing.
Well, and they're both just like, they're trying so hard to take care of each other, but those things are sometimes like mutually exclusive to each other. So then they just end up like fighting, where it's like, let me love you. And I wanted to capture that too. Is like, you know, if you try to take care of somebody else too much, like at the expense of yourself, you know, that's not a healthy balance either. And there's like a couple of situations where they're both trying to do that to each other, and it creates a lot of tension. So
my son is now 15, and yes to what you just said. Sometimes you're trying to take care of someone and they're like, I don't want you to, and you're like, but I'm going to, and you have to learn not to do that. I'm like, oh, a little bit. That's where I am. I find it I feel like I have I need to start taking notes. Like, I have all of these things, and then in like 7 years or so, when he's totally past this, I'd be like, I'm going to write that YA novel, because there's stuff, but I could never write it now because it's clearly not okay now.
Well, I feel like I do that too. Like, I feel like I pull from like my teenage self, but then I also like kind of pull things from my current life or like my adult life, and just kind of mix it all together. And not always like in an overt way, because like, for example, my parents are like happily married and have been happily married. So like writing about the divorce and how contentious that is, that's not like a, based on a true story or my background or anything like that. But there are like relationship elements, that I've pulled from real life, or little Easter eggs that someone will see and, kind of giggle because they know it's about them, or, things to that effect.
Yeah. So when you were writing this, what was your favorite part? What's your favorite part of the book? Or what was your favorite part of writing? That's kind of two questions. We put them together.
I don't really have one, but I guess if I had to pick, it would be like Kara's relationship with her mom is just so like goofy and weird, and I love it, and their inside jokes and the sarcasm and how they kind of, you know, bounce ideas off of each other and the way that they see the world in relation to each other. And that's really like my favorite. Kind of like the little jokes that they whisper to each other on the set, or how they kind of like conspire in the beginning about what they're going to do. Those are the little like asides that I feel like are, they kind of remind me of, the way that I talk to my mom, or like when we get sarcastic and we're making inside jokes. So that's drawn from real life, but that was definitely the most like enjoyable, like the funny scenes of, watching Cara like have this meltdown on an airplane and things like that, just the funny moments.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Yeah, that's my mom and I. We get along really well. My mom, my sister, and I, we all sort of get along really well. We'll be away from each other for months and months because they live in Florida now. So, and then I would, you'll be back together, and it's just, I don't know. I just know where they're gonna leave off, and yeah, that relationship in your book is very similar to that. They just sort of had to. It feels like they had to like band together when the divorce and everything happened, and they've just sort of like they get each other. They get each other.
Yeah,
for sure. So you mentioned having a project that you were working on. Are you working on another project? What's your next?
Yes and no. I mean, so it has been just so chaotic over, I mean, I don't have to tell you, the past couple of years have just been so like, I mean, it's quarantine, Ida, all that, there's just so much that like, I feel like I have started so many projects and they're just kind of in that awkward space. Like I have one that like is more in the music and like concert scene, and that's just sitting there and I haven't touched it. I have another one that's like a very quiet contemporary story that's also like just kind of sitting there. So I think the one that I'm like most invested in at the moment is, again, it's another contemporary. Like you don't want to see me try to create another universe or another world. It will be tragic. So it's another contemporary, but this is kind of it's a little bit like darker and talks a little bit more about like chronic illness themes, and just it's following like a teenager as she's basically coming into like more of a realization of who she's going to be after high school, and kind of navigating everything that's changing and what it means to be like so popular in high school and have all these like friends and activities and clubs, and then all of a sudden realizing that like a lot of what you've had, that's not going to follow you forever. Like you're not going to be the junior prom queen forever. You're just going to be you, and who is that? So that's something I'm more into at the moment, but there's still like my Word documents are just, there's so many of them.
As you were saying, you have many tabs open.
Yes, many tabs open at any given time, both on the computer and in my brain. So yeah.
Well, now you say that we don't want to see you build a totally separate world, but there's a connection between these two books. Both of them aren't totally separate worlds that you're having to build from the ground up, but at the same time, they are sort of insular worlds that the common person doesn't know a ton about. So, prepped, that those teenagers and now almost all of those characters were living in a prepper bunker community. And that's an insular, I mean, for the most part, they were living inside that by those rules and doing everything. So you've kind of created that. It's not a completely like unknown world. It is real, but you open it up to us to read. And the same thing here, you've got the reality show world. They live in that reality show bubble for weeks, and you create that. It kind of gives you this opportunity to create both of those worlds, even though you're not building a totally different planet, for example. So
yeah, that's so true, and that's also kind of deliberate, because I feel like in your everyday life, how often do you just have like an arch nemesis, like a villain enemy? Like, it's not, you might be like, oh, that one guy, like, that plays his music too loud and it's annoying, but it's not like you usually walk around having like some great villain in your life. So I feel like if I can make the setting like kind of play into a threat, that makes everything a little bit more intense. It gives people something to focus on. And it also allows me to kind of control the environment just a little bit more, instead of like, the random, chaos of real life and the real world. So yeah, it's kind of like cheating because it's not really world building, but it is a little bit. So I really do like having those, because I feel like it creates the idea of being isolated and being separate, which is usually something that bothers my main characters a lot, is feeling like they're set apart somehow. And how do they get back to they're fighting their way back to a real world that they want to be in?
Yeah, well, and what I love about it too is that it makes it not just one person or one character that's in this struggle. So, my son, I'm sure, feels as though, the world is out to get him. But he would be sort of singular in that fight, because although he goes to school and there's other teenage friends, they're in their own fight. They're not all in the same one. Where in both of these, you have multiple teenagers or multiple, characters in that same age group as your main characters that are in this same sort of struggle. Well, they see it very differently, but they're in this same little thing that's keeping them in that bubble, whatever that bubble happens to be. Which is an interesting, it's like a, what do they call it? Like a locked room sort of situation, but not, it's not locked all the time, but it's where you have more people in the same struggle, which is fun. I really like about both of your books, because sometimes when I'm reading YA novels, especially, you will have one or two characters in this struggle, and I'm like, look, there's the door. Like, what are you doing here? Just don't walk down that hallway, and then that person won't, like, you have this huge struggle about this, somebody you're gonna walk by in the hallway. I'm like, there's another one. I've been to middle school. Like, it feels maybe like you can't walk around, but you can. But your characters, like, you put them in situations where they can't walk around. Like, they have to, and it's multiple ones, and I enjoy that.
Well, the challenge with All the Right Reasons, honestly, and it's why I cheat a little bit, and I make characters with easy nicknames to remember who they are. And it's something I do in real life, because I'm terrible like with names. So there will be so many like nicknames that I'll give people in my head just to help me remember who they are. So I was actually having trouble in the beginning sorting the contestants apart. And so finally I said, you know what, I'm going to have to make this a little bit more deliberate. And that's when I started to add those portions where Cara has a meltdown and a crisis on the show, because she's like, I can't even tell them apart. And that's kind of me speaking to the reader and just saying, like, listen, I know that this is a huge cast. You are not supposed to be able to tell these people apart. I can't even tell these people apart. And, that's why I'm trying to like limit the names, especially of like support cast, or like I'll refer to them only in a certain context. Like, you'll see like the the person who handles like all the costumes and stuff. You know, I don't have like all that whole team, the hairdresser, the stylist, they're not wandering around randomly interacting with people throughout the show. It's really just when they're getting dressed, when they're getting ready to go on the cameras and blah, blah, blah. Because that just helps people understand who they are in their little bubbles. And it also helped me kind of, you know, eliminate some of the extra names that I didn't need or remember who people are. You know, so that was just like a plotting, you know, issue that really, you know, got me for a while, is how do I deal with this many people?
Well, I think that makes sense. Like if you were on that reality show, I think the same thing. Anytime I've ever watched, they always keep the long open where it mentions all 12 contestants, for example. Even when they're down to the 8, when they're down to the 4, the open still has all 12. Because if you didn't, you wouldn't know. They have to repeat it over and over and over again to me, even as the viewer. And then to imagine they're not getting that intro every day they wake up. They're getting the intro. There's none of that. They're just like, I hope you remember. And when I think probably part of the reason in real life, but in your book, you do this as some of the characters have very specific looks to them or like character traits. And with those, that's how you remember. Oh, the one who wears cowboy boots. Like you go, oh, okay. Right. Like you remember them that way. And that's how you remember them on actual reality TV. So
yeah, and some of these people are like, they're either based on people I know in real life, or you know, they're little, it's almost like they have like some characteristics of like me personally, but in different situations. Like in a past life, you know, I did a lot of work in like especially union environments where things get very contentious. And you know, my dad used to work in a union, and so I make fun of him sometimes and say like, "Oh, you're that old union guy." Mm-hmm. So you know, in the book, that's kind of a recurring joke with one of the cameramen is, you know, Cara will need something, and he's like, "I want my union break. You can't interrupt me in my union break." And you know, so and he's definitely a favorite in the whole book, even though he doesn't even appear that often. And speaks, you know, very infrequently throughout the whole thing. But it was just like a fun character to write and kind of an inside joke with myself. I don't expect anybody else to appreciate that character the way that I did, because I was mostly just giggling the entire time I wrote it. And, you know, it's a joke for me.
No, I thought he was hilarious. Because I got that. And then he kind of, you don't really know what the friendship is, but they were kind of friends. Is it Sam?
Oh yeah, with Sam, the other so like production assistant. Right. So
you get the idea that they were sort of friends, but never like, you know, I don't know how good of friends or whatever. And then so it's you're seeing this sort of banter between the two of them. So he's not wrong. It is time for his union break, and it needs to be this long and whatever. But he's also kind of picking and being friendly, right, you know, with his friend there. So that was a lot of fun. And then of course you know, he's a good sport about it. So he wants his union break, but like often he will be like, okay, I'm coming. Like, you know, let me shove these chips into my mouth and then let's do this. Which, yeah.
Well, because I also feel like, you know, they talk about some other shows that they were on in the past before. So like to kind of establish that they have their history. But I also wanted to emphasize that like, industries can be very small, and like even if they don't seem like it, or you're spread out all over the country. And I also feel like talking about film in general, reality TV, I mean, right now they're filming something right across the street, you know, like right here. So I'm sure you see that all the time too, yeah, where, you know, just constant filming. So that's something else that makes me laugh is, you know, I'll see something and go, oh, it's that company. And I don't know anything about them. It's just, I'll see this, oh, that's the same catering company that did this movie when they filmed up the street. So I even see like these little kind of like recurring things in my own, you know, life. So I figured, you know, how big is that like community necessarily going to be? I'm sure that they share connections and you know, travel in some of the same circles. So it would make sense then that they would have a shared history and they're not just all showing up on the set at the same time as complete strangers.
Right. Well, yeah, and I know from self experience in things like that, even though there's a billion people in show business, if Sam got the job and they needed an extra camera person, he might
Right.
have said, "Oh, I know this guy. He'd totally come down and work real hard. He'll do blah 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 blah," and they go, "Cool, like have him call me." So you end up getting jobs that way, who and there's a hole in the casting or whatever it
Right.
is, and then all of a sudden you're there, and so yeah, that I enjoyed that sort of insider, them not all being complete strangers. And okay, I have to mention the nicknames that she gave to the producers, which is amazing, and like also plays right into, you say you give them nicknames, like plays right into that. If you had done that by last name, I would be like, oh, that would take me forever to learn, right? But because you gave them each a nickname, I was like, oh, I can picture them in my head the way they like, and I don't need to know anything else about them. I don't remember. I don't even know if you said what they exactly look like color of hair or whatever. I just know that one of them's really tall, one of them's shorter, one of them's shorter. This is what I know. That's what I. And then you learn what they do, yeah, along with their names. So 2 thumbs up for that one.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, that was me cheating a little bit, but it's also like kind of what I do in real life because I am so bad at names. And also my husband is really tall, so it's a little bit of a jab at him too, because we have a lot of like height related jokes, obviously. Because I joke that I am a Korean giant because I am so far above the average for Korean women. But my husband is 6'5", so when I stand next to him, I look so small. So whenever I say like, hey, like you took 3 more slices of pizza than I did and you ate them all, and he'll go, well, I'm bigger, so I get to eat more. So like that's the funny joke.
Yeah.
About having the producers nicknaming them for their heights and kind of like joking that one gets a bigger coffee than the other because of their height. That's straight out of like us in the morning getting ready.
You're like, that one was real life.
Yep, absolutely.
So another thing that I do want to touch on too, and this might come in on what you said, the project that you're sort of working on now, I don't know. But in the book, I'm going to blank on his name. What is
Connor.
Connor's name? So it is mentioned almost in passing and I don't want to mispronounce this. So can you pronounce it for me?
So Connor has Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which is what I also have. And you should not feel bad about mispronouncing it, because the ways that I have seen even like doctors butcher this is like hilarious. I mean, the number of different spellings and pronunciations, it's funny.
Yeah, and actually it's spelled exactly the way you said it. Like it sounds, when you said it, I was looking at it and I'm like, okay, I should have just gone for it because it's pretty much exactly the way it's spelled. But so what I really appreciated, and I don't know a lot about this syndrome, is that it's very important that he tells her. It is, you do see a couple little things that it affects him with, but it is not a huge piece of, it doesn't draw away from anything else that is going on. And I feel like that is more real life, or the real life that we want it to be, with things where we just don't make that the huge piece. It just is a piece. Makes sense.
Yeah, and that's what I was going for. Like when I wrote this is, so it bothers me when I see a lot of like TV shows or books where you'll have a disabled character, but they're kind of like, oh, it's so sad, or like, oh, it's so inspirational, but it's never like, this is like a person. Like Cara's opinion of Connor does not change. Like once she finds this out, she's just like, oh, it's okay. But originally when they first start discussing, he's kind of a little like standoffish because, again, so he's in a sling because he's he has an injury to his shoulder. So obviously that stands out a lot. And that's sort of it's a little bit of a joke with me. I posted on Twitter one day, like a picture of side by side, and I said, who wore it better? Because I spent, like 3 years or something in a sling. So that is like all the questions. Oh my gosh. Or people want to tell you their life story about what happened when they broke their arm when they were 7. So when she first initially kind of asks like what's going on with that, he kind of brushes her off, jokes and laughs and whatever. And that's something that's really true to life for me, is like using humor as like deflecting, right? Mm-hmm. It's like, this is none of your business. I'm just going to crack a joke and leave now. Like, but then as they get more invested into each other, like emotionally, then he starts to open up and be like more truthful about it. But it's still supposed to be like a very small part of who he is. Because I'm afraid too often you see disabled characters where it's like, that's the only thing you see about them. And since this is something that I personally have, it was also important for me to include this first, where it's showing a disabled character who's having fun and falling in love and getting to star, even not being the main character, but getting to be the love interest in a rom-com and having it be fun and goofy, and he's doing everything that everyone else is doing. And having that come out first before I have another project where I also want to delve into chronic illness, but I want to look a little bit more at the identity side of it, which tends to be more like introspective and conflicted. And I don't want that to be the first like touch point that I have, because that's something that I'm afraid people automatically default to. And I want to show them like, hey, no, this is, we can do things still, I promise. Like, we don't just sit in the dark I know it looks from the lighting like I'm sitting here in the dark, but we don't just sit here in the dark.
That's not all
like lamenting our lives or something, the way that I've seen it done in, a lot of other fiction or TV. So I wanted to have, something fun, something enjoyable be my first, kind of foray into that space.
Yeah, when they're sitting there and I know that he's about to like tell her, and you can tell it's hard for him because he's like, this person that I'm about to tell this thing to could just be like, oh no, shut down, run away, whatever, you don't know. And in that moment for me, I was like, oh no, because I don't know either, really. Like, I have a feeling I think I know what she should do. I think I know what she will do, but I'm like, oh no. Like, I hope this goes really well. I hope this goes well for him. And it does, and that's good. But that was like, it was just another moment. And I'm sure you've probably had that moment with people in your life multiple times. So it wasn't that stretch for you, but I was there, like, you had me on the edge, because I felt I was so invested in both of them and their relationship that I was just really hoping it went the way he was hoping it would go.
Yeah, and I think it does for the most part. And he kind of also like kind of herds her in the right direction too, because there are some things that people just tend to say, and they come from a place of goodness, and you try to see that sometimes. Like, something will happen and people say like, oh, I'm sorry. I'm like, what you're really saying is like, you're sorry that I exist as I am. And when you phrase it that way, then it's like, oh, that's really cringy. But people don't mean, that's not the way they mean it. And sometimes you just have to show them like, hey, I appreciate what you mean, but here's what you said. And they go, oh. And so these are conversations you have with people as your relationship progresses. And that's something I wanted to show too, where they go from like, you can't know my secrets, I'm an enigma, to like, connecting more. And Cara does it too with everything going on at home with the gym and, and money and the divorce and how upsetting it is to her in the beginning. Like, she's not saying anything about that. But then as they grow closer together, she's opening up too about, the challenges and the problems in her life and what's important to her. So you see like kind of them going from these like really flat kind of like paper characters where they're like terrified of showing weakness on this show, right, to now getting to be a little bit more vulnerable. You start to see the little like different sides to them that originally they didn't have.
So another thing that this reality TV show bubble gives you, like allows you to have in this book, which I know there isn't anything I didn't like, so I know I keep going, well, I really like this part, I really like that part, but no, really, I did. So there's another thing where that's a natural progression for characters in books, TV shows, movies, where you're holding back, and then for some reason you decide to share more with somebody. And in this book with that bubble, the reality show and the way it's just produced and they're shoved in this direction and that direction, they can see people for this amount of time and that amount of time, it builds that world that doesn't, it gives them an excuse not to open up. Like if you're only going to see somebody for 30 minutes for breakfast, and then you're going to be not around them for the next 6 hours, but then you're going to have to go ice skating or something, like when are you going to tell them all about your deep dark secrets? Like you're so it does, it gives you that, you've built this thing that is like an excuse for why that they're deciding not to share, or they're not able to share some things sometimes.
Well, and that's also why I wanted to add in some of the extra like characters, because like originally I didn't plan on having like, my grumpy union cameraman. He was not originally supposed to really like have that many lines or appear in that many scenes. He was just kind of supposed to be floating around as a stand-in, so that I could just say one name and have that mean like the camera crew. So it wasn't always the camera crew did X, the camera crew did Y. But then over time, I realized like if I can use these other characters to offset how infrequently they're talking to the contestants, you can see like, wow, okay, so you spent like 4 hours with your hairdresser and 3 minutes with this contestant. So like, obviously, like your time is not equal here, and just kind of show like how offset that is with the kind of behind the scenes versus what the viewer of that show would see, which would really just be them interacting on camera with these contestants, but in such a controlled fashion, you don't realize that it's like, hello, person I talked to 3 minutes, like for 3 minutes 5 days ago.
That is fascinating. So, okay, here's what I want. I will watch this TV show if it comes out. I want a reality show of the people filming a reality show. Doesn't need to be, I just need a camera. I want a behind the scenes camera to follow around the crew of a reality show, because
it's like camera inception,
right? Because I think that would be fascinating. Not only would it be great for like somebody who wanted to get into that industry, but like that's what I don't need that extra drama. I'm just like, I'm more interested in how did we get 12 people to live in the same house for 6 weeks? Like, I don't need you to build me the drama. I just want to watch it. I just want to know like how that works. So yeah, I want to see the camera people and the makeup people, and who were they running around doing all the makeup for all of these people, and having to figure out the looks for all these people, because that's another piece that happens in the book, which I don't know if you made that up or if that's something that actually happens, where before they actually go to film the show, they get a budget for wardrobe and they go shopping, and then they have a stylist who's basically, they had to send measurements and pictures, and by the time they get there, she's got this whole plan for the way they should look and everything. And I don't know, is that real?
So I saw there are a couple instances where they have done that on these shows, but for the most part, like they're bringing their own wardrobes. But I wanted to use that scene as like a transition point of like stepping into this different world, of becoming a different world, or a different person rather, and looking a new way. And also just Cara having this moment of coming from somebody who's like constantly worried about money, and mom being worried about money. And that's why I had her bring, her best friend with her, who also is very concerned about like her future and money and college, and having them stand there and look at these dresses with these like, $400 price tags, and just having this moment of like, I can't do this. Like, it's not made for me. And also bringing in the like the body image and like that whole kind of theme that I have going on in there, which was like something that made me a little bit more nervous, because I was worried about doing everything the right way and having it come through the way that I wanted, which is I wanted Cara to feel a little bit insecure about the way that she looks because her parents are just such fitness buffs, and they look so like traditionally perfect. But meanwhile, like mom doesn't feel perfect because she's been through this terrible divorce, and she no longer feels that way. And now she starts focusing on, do I look beautiful? And Cara's like, it doesn't matter, you're strong. And she's like, but maybe I want to be beautiful. And she's like, Mom, you can bench press like an elephant. Like, you're so strong. You run an Ironman. Like, calm down. And she, but I want to feel beautiful. And kind of looking at the different ways like that they approach being a certain way, looking a certain way, and how that kind of feeds into how they see themselves. That's something that I felt like was really central to, like, when I was growing up. I remember thinking like, there's got to be something else than this that's okay. Because I was never that kind of pretty, and I was never, kind of following those trends or whatever, and always feeling really insecure about myself because of it, because I didn't have like a Western like body, and I didn't fit into a lot of the clothes. Like, if I go on Amazon or an online retailer or something where they don't have, like a sizing chart necessarily that makes any sense, it's like a generic one or it's nonsense. If I look in the comments and it's like, this is so small, this is made wrong, this fits horribly, I'm like, take my money, because I already know that it's a different body style, more than likely a different shape, different, and that's why I, a lot of times I'll buy clothes that are, if it's something very expensive or very important, like a gown or something for like a formal wear, I will make sure that I'm buying it from like a Korean company or an Asian company that just has like a better idea of what I'm going to look right in and what's going to fit right for my measurements. So that was something I really wanted to get into, because I feel like as much as I didn't care about clothes and fashion at Cara's age, I cared too much at the same time.
Yeah. You're in the middle of like, I don't care that it's the brand name, but also like, why doesn't this look right? Like, I don't.
Yeah, kind of. Or like, how am I supposed to, like, I'm never going to look like I'm supposed to look, quote unquote.
Right.
Or I'm never going to look as pretty as this person, etc. And having this like really narrowly defined idea of what looks right and what looks beautiful. And watching Cara and her mom both go through that, but in different ways. And also just like the constant emphasis on maintaining this image on camera at the same time, adding all that pressure and really putting them under a microscope and then kind of seeing what happens.
Yeah. So there were some moments where they're sitting in their suite and they're like in, jeans and a t-shirt or sweatpants or something, just talking and hanging out. And then the producers or Sam would come in and say, oh, we got to get ready to go do this. And they're like, oh, okay. And they're putting on their fancy dress or whatever they're supposed to wear for wherever it is, and their shoes and whatever. And I'm like, yeah, you start out going, oh, isn't this beautiful? And I feel whatever because I'm in this gown. And then like 3 days in, you're like, because you're not, they're not able to be them. A lot of times, and the fashion shows that in the book, when they have to change for these things, and they are changing, they're putting on their face and going to the beach. They're putting on their face.
And it's something that's designed for them by somebody else a lot of the time. So it's like, here, I'm going to dress you up into the person I want you to be, instead of let me kind of showcase who you really are. And that's a lot of pressure to put on somebody, even if you're not like on camera and knowing you're going to be like on national television. And
Exactly. Well, anyone who has been watching from beginning to end of this event knows that I love this book. So you should all get yourself one. It comes out on February 15th, but if you order one from us at Blue Cypress before the 12th, we will get you a personalized copy. If you order one after that, you'll have just a signed copy, which we'll have plenty of. But if you'd like it personalized for yourself or a younger person that we will have those. Like I said, order them by the 12th, and we will have those for you. I'm going to put the links down here. You can order them on our website if you want. You can pick them up from our website. You can't pick them up from our website. You can order them on the website and pick them up in the store. Or if you don't live here in New Orleans, we can ship them to you worldwide. Just write in the notes who you want it personalized if you'd like it personalized. And yeah, thank you so much for joining me for Book Banter. It was very exciting. So everybody that was watching, have a very good evening, and thank you, Bethany, so much.
Thank you.